Put on your big Hollywood sunglasses and light the torch, because it's cellar time. Welcome to the Crack Cellar, as the prophecy was once foretold. I'm T-Spirit Penguin Daniel.
And I'm Fat Nickel under. I can't do it. I don't know what fat. How do you put Undertaker and Nickel together?
The Nickel Taker?
I thought about that initially, and I was like, "That's lame. That doesn't even make sense. You got to do something better than that."
The dead Nickel?
Under has to be in there to make
yeah.
No one's gonna get it.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's like a natural combination with your name and the Undertaker's name, you know.
Nickel-plated shovel. I don't know.
And broadcaster, as you know, it is the year 2024 of our Lord, and with that, we have a new rating system. This time, it's my turn, broadcaster. You sullied our reputation with the Mr. Satan rating system that couldn't have been more of a beautiful disaster. As 311 would put it. It was a beautiful disaster. And,
well, they also said it was the color of their energy as well. So you have to understand.
There are definitely some amber undertones to your video feed. So I definitely can see that.
Some amber, you're right. Can't argue that. I need a 311 poster back here, dude. You're right. I'm missing the plot. Unreal.
Indeed. But today we transition to the new 80s slasher rating system, in which we will rate all of our reviews on the greatest horror movie villains of the 80s. And first up is our S-Rank broadcaster. I know you won't disagree with this one. He's the man, the myth, the legend, sometimes talked about as a pedophile, but we don't go there because that's not canon, okay? That's not canon. And that would be Freddy Krueger, broadcaster Nickels. What say you with the S-Rank Freddy Krueger? Do you agree with
Definitely
that?
Pedophile.
Hey, yeah. Listen, dude.
Yeah,
come on
sure.
now.
Definitely.
We're not supposed to go that far, all right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. What are you saying absolutely to right now? That's what I need to know.
Anyways. Yeah, I mean, Pinhead's. I almost want to say Pinhead just because he always seemed like the villain that was like, you look at Berserk and you like the God Hand.
Yeah.
And you got like Void
no doubt.
overruling the rest of them. I always got the Hellraiser Void vibe, It's like Hellraiser ain't below anybody. For sure not fucking Freddy Krueger.
Right.
He's fucking the master of the labyrinth, dude. Freddy Krueger doesn't even.
No doubt. I look at Freddy Krueger and Pinhead in almost the exact same way I look at FF6 and FF7. They're 1A and 1B to me, and depending on the day, what side of the bed I wake up on, I might consider one over the other. So when I put Freddy Krueger as the S rank, I did like sort of, I pained about it a little bit. It's hard for me to put Pinhead below someone, as you said. It's hard to put Pinhead below anyone.
Yeah. Well, just by the nature of his character, I mean, not putting aside like the quality of all the villains' films, I feel it's like Pinhead is always archetype-wise definitely above them all. He's the ringleader.
He's the fucking hell priest. Yeah, like it's tough. But
Freddy Krueger specifically got done dirty later on in his life, though, so it's kind of hard to look at Freddy Krueger the same way now.
It's important to understand with this rating system, we're talking 80s only. So anything from the 90s, the 2000s, that doesn't count. This whole rating system is based on their presence within the 80s. Okay?
What? We can't do Freddy Krueger went to space?
No, none of that.
I mean, sorry. It wasn't Freddy.
It was Jason X.
Jason X. Jason X.
And yes, he went up and I think he killed Olivia Munn in space or something like that. I don't remember.
Nah, check not nearly as hard as Olivia Munn. But we did see her titties, I'm pretty sure, before she got taken out.
Yeah, I think The Rock showed up at one point. I don't fucking know anymore. It's all blur. But the reason it's just Freddy Krueger's so pinnacle to me becoming interested in horror in the 80s. He had it all. He had the most sinister look. The burn victim look was super sinister back in the day. He had the claw. The claw is one of the most iconic horror weapons of all time, period, bar none. And he had a sense of fucking humor. So there's going to be another person on this list later down that also has a sense of humor, but he doesn't have any of the other shit that Freddy has. Freddy is the total package, the total deal. And every Nightmare on Elm Street that came out in the 80s is solid fucking gold. The original, number 2, number 3, Dream Warriors. Like, we're talking about S-tier horror movies. So there were no bad Freddy Krueger movies in the 80s. So for me, he's got to take the top spot. But now we get to A rank. Obviously, it's Pinhead. Again, Pinhead. No bad Hellraiser movies in the 80s. It was only Hellraiser 1 and 2. 3 came out in the 90s, like I think 91 or something. Hellraiser 1 and 2 are both fucking works of art. They are stunning. I actually like the Hellraiser 1 and 2 movies more than I like Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2. But we're not talking about the quality of the movie here. We're talking about the actual fullness of the villain. And Pinhead does not have a sense of humor. He does not have a cool weapon.
Dude.
What he has is foreboding personality and a fucking... He has a crew behind him. He's got the chitterer guys like... He's got the bitch with the fucking folded out skin. He's got a crew. He's got a posse. And he is one of the most evil looking. They're quips. They're not jokes. It's.
I mean, they're pretty solid quips.
Yeah, but dude, Freddy Krueger would make dick jokes right before he cut you in half in your dreams. You know what I mean? Like, he had a special energy, Freddy Krueger. Pinhead doesn't have that. Pinhead's serious. Pinhead is he's seeking communion with the Leviathan. All right, this is totally different shit. But again. 1A and 1B. 1A and 1B, man. It's tough as hell for me, but I just think that Pinhead is slightly lacking in the personality department, where Freddy Krueger is like a 10 out of 10 personality. No, I'm going to give Pinhead more of an 8 out of 10 personality. Just slightly gets edged out for me. But that being said,
I think this is all just based on actors. Freddy Krueger's actor is amazing. If you stack Freddy Krueger's actor to all of the iconic horror villains, he was the best.
He was.
And he was kind of, as a character, kind of designed to be more of a personality, because he was, if you think really hard about it, he was the only villain that kind of was allowed to have he was an adult classic villain played by a male that was allowed to have a face. Like about this, Jason Voorhees.
They fucked his face up, but yeah, he had it.
But you still saw his eyes and his mouth and his nose. Like, he had a personality that you could, like Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, even Chucky, because he was a doll, you know.
No doubt.
They all kind of, you can't really get good acting out of those roles just because they're they put the bag over their head, essentially, you know. It's kind of hard, especially for those times. Now, you could argue with state-of-the-art, you know, cinematography and shit, you don't need your face on a roll because of everyone points to Marvel and shit like that. But nonetheless, you get what I'm saying. No, Freddy kind of shined because of that.
Yeah, you might be right. Like, in terms of horror actors, Robert Englund and Doug Bradley are definitely my 2 favorite horror actors of all time, and they're Pinhead and Freddy Krueger. Yeah. Now, when we get down to the bottom 2/3 of this list, there's going to be a theme. And the theme is they're not great actors. They're covered in masks, or they're a doll. Exactly what you're saying. So I think you do have a good point there. But when you compare the movie quality of Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser to some of these other villains that we're going to talk about, the quality isn't the same either. Like Hellraiser and Nightmare on Elm Street had straight up hitters in the 80s.
Yeah.
A couple of these ones we're going to talk about had some
I'm gonna
thuds.
before we even get to the first, because I kind of feel like I think I know where this is going. You're gonna throw quality wise some shade at Friday the 13th in comparison to some of these, but I will defend Friday the 13th and say Friday the 13th was kind of meant to be a very, very low budget horror movie for the time. That was filmed. I think at the time it was with like a college like crew.
Yeah.
Like all the people that were on that movie set were like pretty much getting paid dick.
Yeah. A lot of those early 80s, late 70s horror movies were like that. They were on a shoestring budget with a bunch of college kids. A lot of them were. But
I kind of liked Friday the 13th, the first one, because of that. I loved the raw grind of that. Just
Well, all right. Wait. You know what? Let's go ahead and transition to our B rank then. So we got Freddy Krueger at S, we got Pinhead at A, and then we got Jason Voorhees at B. And a lot of people will put Jason number 1. One of my best friends is the biggest Jason Voorhees fan on the planet. He has posters everywhere, Friday the 13th. Like, he is obsessed with Jason Voorhees. He would kill me for putting him at a B rank in the middle. Now, this, and you've already hinted at this, there are a few reasons why I don't see him in the same category as Freddy Krueger and Pinhead. First of all, Hockey Mask. Hockey Mask is sick as fuck. It's iconic. It's cool. But he doesn't really have a face. And I know there's going to be some Friday the 13th nerds who be like, oh no, in Friday the 13th part 6, he takes off the mask and you see his spaghetti head from waterlogged sitting at the bottom of Crystal Lake for 50 years. Okay, I get it. There's one point where you see his face, but for the most part, he's behind a hockey mask. Okay. Also, and this is the most damning thing for me, Friday the 13th 1 does not have Jason in it. Jason is not in the original movie of his fucking franchise. His mom is the villain in Friday the 13th Part 1. His mom. Jason is just a folktale in that movie. Oh, the kid drowned in the lake and blah, blah, blah. He's not in it. It's not his movie. So it's tough for me to really put him in that sort of air when he isn't even in his own original movie. Could you imagine if the original Hellraiser didn't have Pinhead? If the original Nightmare on Elm Street didn't have Freddy Krueger? Fuck no. They made those movies. Especially Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, you can make an argument with Hellraiser. Pinhead doesn't appear till the very fucking end. But when he does appear, holy fucking shit.
But again, like, I'm going to defend it because, you know, they were just trying to make a horror movie on such a little budget. And, like, they didn't even know Jason Voorhees was going to be a thing. They kind of, like, birthed him in the first movie.
They birthed the idea of him. But, see, the thing is Friday the 13th Part 1 is not a supernatural horror movie. And I think I kind of forgot to say this early on when I was kind of sort of establishing what this tier list really is. Not only is it 80s horror villains, but only supernatural 80s horror villains. So every single person on this list this isn't Scream. We're not going to talk about Ghostface. This is supernatural horror. And
what's Michael Myers' supernatural?
Well, we're going to get to that. There's a reason why I have him low on the list.
I didn't even know he was supernatural.
Well, it's a debate. It's a fucking debate. It's a debate. But in certain movies, he appears to be supernatural. In other movies, he appears not to be. And this is another reason why I have him low. But back to Jason. The reason I have him in the middle of the list is because he is sick as fuck. His hockey mask is awesome. His machete is fucking awesome. It's iconic. He has one of the greatest horror movie video games of all time in the Friday the 13th video game for the NES. That is straight up to this day one of the greatest horror video games of all time. There's a lot of things going for Jason. He's iconic. Most people put him number 1. But as I said, I just, there's a few little nagging problems for me.
I think he's the most picturesque out of all of them. Yeah. Like if you were to put all the villains together in like a mugshot lineup, you know, Jason is like right there, like with not too grotesque looking, so he can be like in malls and stuff and not be censored. He's still a horror villain. He still looks menacing. he's like the Terminator of the horror of universe, you know? He's like
Or is
Arnold
Michael
Schwarzenegger.
Myers. See here, and again, I kind of have a little cross-pollination bias against Michael Myers and Jason for the same reason, is that they both sort of have the same identity, but Jason does it better. You just called him the Terminator of horror movies. A lot of people would say the same thing about Michael Myers. I know it's tough. You weren't thinking about it before like that, but now you're like, oh shit, he's right. They do have the kind of the same identity.
See, I think Michael, like out of all these guys, I think Michael Myers is like the most sly comedic one of them all, because he's the one like all. Yeah, because all of his movies are always just based on him just kind of like beating everybody just because, you know, he's like, got there before you did, bitch, because he'd like grab my mask before anyone saw me, bitch. Just like all this stuff, like it all kind of just seems like this weird, I'm just better than you and I'm gonna kill you. There's no real explanation of Michael Myers' character like the rest of them, like with Chucky soul being trapped in a doll and seeking vengeance and just murdering people. You got Jason Voorhees' mom tortured him his whole life, and then he became a fucking trap soul and, you know, started wanting to murder fucking college kids or whatever. I forgot how it exactly went, but it was
no. The way it went is Jason drowned in the lake because the camp counselors were busy fucking on the beach while they're supposed to be watching the kids in the lake. So Jason drowns in the lake because, you know, some college kids are fucking, you know, coming in each other.
They let the autistic fucking kid drown in the lake while they're
Exactly. It's a story of our time for sure. And that's where the supernatural thing comes in with Jason, and there's a reason for it. Jason actually is totally supernatural. He is a dead person who came back to life to fucking kill college kids that were fucking while he died. That's his backstory, right?
Grant me strength to come back, and I will kill all of these college kids.
Right, dude. Honestly, you could make an argument that Jason Voorhees is a strong Christian warrior. He's coming and killing all the fornicators for Jesus. So
it's Sodom and Gomorrah, dude.
This is had to go. Straight up.
He was the fire rain, dude. He came down, or from back up. Who knows?
Yeah, and
I guess it's really just a perspective, because like all these characters got nerfed. You know, like you're talking about the A's, but it's hard to remove. It's like talking about like games like Magic the Gathering. Like if you're an old school player, you just know about all these OP cards, and the game was just different. And now the game's like LGBTQ plus 5A, you know, so it's all different, you know. So it's like, you just got to forget about all that. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like Chucky, I can't. It's hard to think about Chucky now. You know, it's really hard to think about.
And that leads us to our C rank.
Yeah.
Chucky. So Chucky's a really interesting one. I loved Chucky. I mean, I loved all these guys. Let's be real honest about it. This whole list, I love every single one of these villains, and I loved all of these movies. So it's like really picking between your kids, if we're being honest about it. But you got to pick losers. And in this family, Chucky is one of the losers. It's not that he's really a loser. It's just he's really mid. Like he has a few really good qualities. Now, he has the sense of humor. Fucking chef's kiss with Chucky, just like Freddy Krueger. He's got that element, the perfect sense of humor. Some of Chucky's one-liners are just legendary in the original trilogy. And even in the newer Chucky movies, there's some good shit in those newer ones. In fact, I would say that Chucky has held up since the 80s better than any of these guys have.
The voice actor is really, he's funny.
Yeah, Brad Dourif.
He delivers, by the way, bitch really good.
He does.
Dumb bitch.
And by the way, really well. He plays a character in Star Trek Voyager, for you nerds out there that want to watch some sci-fi and see Chucky in space being a psychopath as a human. He plays a psychotic lieutenant in Star Trek Voyager, and like, dude, he's the best part of that fucking show in the early seasons, dude. Brad Dourif carries that bitch. He's a great actor, though, and he's still voice acting Chucky in the TV series, which I have not watched the new season of Chucky. I heard it wasn't great, so I'm sort of putting it off. But
I mean, we did that first season, and it was
all right. Yeah.
It was all right, but I mean, I could already see the writing on the wall with that shit.
Yeah. So the reason I get Chucky down to the C category, it's because other than comedy, other than the comedic aspects of Chucky, there's some L's. Like the
The
it's
Bride of
absurd.
Chucky.
Okay, The Bride of Chucky is a huge L. That movie sucked so
Yeah.
hard, and it it just became after Child's Play 2. The first two were really good movies. Child's Play 3, I like it, but when I objectively look back on it, it was not a good movie. And it just was like the sort of what he did, it stopped becoming slasher and it started to become evil Magic 8 Ball. The way he did horror in those movies, like he would sort of create like Twilight Zone-y, Outer Limits-y sort of situations for human characters. And it wasn't really what we're talking about. When we talk about Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, they were
Yeah.
they were slashing. They were killing people. The horror came from them. With Chucky towards the end, it almost became like Home Alone, where he was like setting up traps for people and like
Yeah.
it wasn't really the same. And there's an absurdity. There's a level of absurdity with Chucky that's hard to overcome. The whole talking doll killing people thing.
I think all of these villains only have a certain amount of novelty to them until they naturally run dry. And I think Chucky just had a very limited amount. Him
Yeah.
being just a doll that kind of got surprised humans by just like being in a closet with a bunch of other dolls. Surprise! This one's alive with a knife. You know, like you only can see that so many times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of that. But when I was younger, I remember constantly getting Problem Child and Child's Play mixed up. Like when you're looking at the video, what did they call that? The TV guide. I'd be like, "Oh shit, Problem Child's on," but it was a Child's Play. But in my mind, I was like, "Oh, Problem Child," click, and I'd be scared because I was a little kid. I'd be like, "Fuck this!" But it was funny because you could almost like in a Mandela type effect, with the Sinbad Shazam movie, you can almost tie Problem Child and Child's Play together in a weird way because, like, Problem Child, the kid is the kid that died and became Chucky. They kind of look similar, they act similar, they're kind of, you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're
Anyways.
saying. And that's sort of what I was getting at with the way that Chucky's identity sort of becomes mixed with Home Alone a little bit in terms of like how he inflicts horror. Problem Child does the same way in a PG way. Like if you watch the Problem Child movies, it's pretty much like Home Alone, but a little bit more sinister and a little bit more, I'm sending my troubled child to the Utah desert for 90 days to set him straight.
Yeah, that movie, those, I use this term sometimes because when I want to describe something that feels alien to me and I can't really put a finger on, like a gas leak is in the room and no one knows it and everyone's kind of getting fucking high off gas.
Yeah.
Those Problem Child movies have a lot of scenes. I don't know what it is. Like, there's scenes in those movies where they're using certain color block schemes and everyone's wearing goofy colors and stuff like that. And even as a child, I would look at it and I'd just be like, this makes me uncomfortable. The scene it's supposed to be a funny scene, but all these people are scaring me for some reason. I don't know why. Like they're lizard people.
No,
Anyways.
definitely. Those movies, a lot of movies from the 90s had that issue, actually. There's a weird thing with early 90s movies where they all had that element you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Chucky's but like, he's kind of like he's kind of the joke of the 80s slasher villains. You know what I mean? Like if you have to say like one's a joke, it's pretty much him. But that's not to say there isn't anything worse. And I know this is going to be controversial as hell.
I saw it and I was like, damn.
But Michael Myers is one of the worst horror villains of all time. He's not scary. He has no physical presence. The thing with Halloween is that,
and he killed LL Cool J, guys.
Yeah. And
right?
Yeah, fucking
did he? Or did LL Cool J survive?
Oh fuck. Oh shit!
And
Speaking of Mandela effect, who knows?
And H2O, right? That was LL Cool J, the
That
security
was
guard at the
LL
gate.
Cool J. I'm pretty sure he died in it, but
Okay,
maybe
all
maybe
right.
not. Who knows? It's been a long
Anyway,
time since I saw that movie. The thing with Michael Myers is that he doesn't talk. He has no personality. There's no sense of humor. He has a very boring weapon. It's a kitchen knife. It's like the shitty version of Jason Voorhees. I will make the argument that essentially Michael Myers is just the shitty version of Jason Voorhees. He has a mask on that's worse. He has a fucking spray painted William Shatner mask on, worse than the hockey mask. He has a smaller, shittier knife, and he does the same act. He's spooky, he's stoic, he doesn't talk, he does jump scares, you don't think he's there, and then he's there, and I'm just not impressed too much with Michael Myers. The coolest thing about the Halloween movies, in my opinion, is the sort of sound effect that he makes when he's nearby, but he hasn't revealed himself yet. He does this sort of like he does this like sort of noise. And he stopped doing that in the newer ones, but if you listen to like the older Halloween movies, there was this little noise he used to do, which was the only part that I really found that scary. Other than that, Michael Myers is just a dope. He's a fucking dude from an insane asylum. He's autistic, most likely, and just like wants his mom's love and thinks that his mom abandoned him. So he's like on a spree of killing and thinks, oh no, my mom picked my sister over me. I need to kill my sister now. And he hunts fucking his sister down for 15 movies. It's just, I don't know, man. The stories suck. The movies suck. Like, even the fucking Rob Zombie remake couldn't do too much with him, in my opinion. It's just, he's a bad character. But it's controversial.
I thought the first Halloween remake from Rob Zombie was actually pretty good.
It was
but that's just because it was a good movie. That's not saying like saying much about Michael Myers himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. There's not much to be said. I will say though, if anything, most of Michael Myers' substance as a character comes from his sister, Jamie Lee Curtis. Every movie, he's kind of like the ghost that follows Jamie Lee Curtis's new life.
Mm-hmm.
Every movie, and it comes in like a wrecking ball, like Miley Cyrus, So
you just made me hate him even more.
That's kind of like in my mind when I'm really trying to dissect him. I think that's the idea of his character. He's not really supposed to have an identity, more just like the antithesis to whatever Jamie Lee Curtis is trying to do.
Yeah. So that is essentially my reasoning for putting him at the bottom as our D rank for 2024. But there's one special factor. There's one specific thing that really nailed it down that he was going to be the D rank and not Chucky. Because for a while there in my head, I'm like, well, is he really worse than Chucky? Am I off base here? But there's one thing that stuck in my head that just cemented it for me. And you know what that is? If you had to guess, there's one big outlier with him and his franchise that sticks out. And it's similar to Jason Voorhees. It's very similar to what happened with Jason Voorhees, but different.
Over saturation? Like way too many movies?
No.
Because that was a huge problem for fucking Halloween, dude.
He got
had way too many.
True. This is it. And again, I know this is a controversial take, but I stick by it and I believe it. I'm not just saying this shit to, whatever. He got benched in his own franchise, Broadcaster Nickels. No other horror villain on this list, and that I can even think of, this has happened to. He was not in Halloween 3. Halloween 3, they fucking benched Michael Myers. They said, you know what, dude? You can stay home. We're going to make our own movie because you suck.
Oh, yeah.
And now, that fact by itself is a huge red mark against Michael Myers, but it gets worse, dude. It gets worse. The cherry on top is, and again, controversial opinion, but I'm going to stand by it. Halloween 3 is the best Halloween movie of all time. It is number 1 in the 16 Halloween movies that have been created. It is the best best Halloween movie, and it's the only one without Michael Myers. L. Fucking L, dude.
What was that one about?
That one's about the fucking evil candy factory that's like with the trick-or-treaters with the masks that turn them into demons and shit.
Sounds like a Goosebumps story.
Dude, it's like a rated hard R Goosebumps story, for sure. But there ain't no Michael Myers. There's no mention of Michael Myers. There's no Jamie Lee Curtis. They just straight up were like, you know what? This shit sucks. Let's hit the reset button. And you don't do that to a great horror villain. You do not do that. They never did that to Freddy Krueger. They never did that to Pinhead.
Isn't that great though? You got him at D.
Exactly. And that is the 80s slasher ranking system, Broadcaster Nickels. Now, are you ready to slash this review of Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire?
Now that we've reviewed our review scheme, we are ready to move on.
Brought to you by Rebel 100 Whiskey, drinking by all of the Rebel Moon watchers out there.
Wait a minute, what? Did you serious? No way. Is that affiliated?
This is the official whiskey of all Zach Snyder fans. Rebel Moon Whiskey, 100 proof for your pleasure.
Yeah, he was probably about halfway through a bottle of that when he was trying to pitch it to the fucking Disney execs for the 18th time, and they were like, for the fucking billionth time, Zach, this is Samurai 7, and it's a shitty Samurai 7. You only got 6 people here.
Yeah.
You can't even count right.
Yeah, and I think that's where I want to start off this review is I heard a lot of shit talking about how this is a Star Wars ripoff. No. This is a Kurosawa ripoff, just like Star Wars was. They are the same kind of ripoff. You can debate the quality of the two, but they are both ripping off Kurosawa. This is not a Star Wars movie. This movie's nothing like Star Wars. Other than the cheap Hux impersonator that gets tentacle sex in his bathtub. Other than that.
It's a stepping process. It's a Kurosawa film first and foremost, but it was pitched to become a Star Wars film. So in essence, the real way to look at it is it's a Samurai 7 knockoff that was originally meant to be a Star Wars film, but now it's just a shitty Samurai 7 knockoff on Netflix.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is it's not a complete movie. This movie was made with the sequel being pre-greenlit. So essentially, Zach Snyder said, I already know my sequel's gonna be made, so I don't have to tell a complete story. So he just told half a story in this movie, and it doesn't end on a satisfying note whatsoever. The only thing of substance that happens in the movie gets backtracked right before the credits roll. So it's like, oh, so really nothing happened in this movie. It's back to square one. And that's a bummer to me. Like, there's really, the big thing that happens in this movie is the Viking guy betrays them all at the end, which, you know, I will admit, I didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming?
I think you're getting him mixed up with somebody else that's from Vikings.
He looks like a dude from Vikings. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying.
I was like, that guy was never in a Viking show, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he looks just like him.
Did you see that coming with his betrayal? Because that's the one thing I think Zack Snyder did well. I didn't see that coming. I really didn't.
No, well, the character, the actor gave no hints, and the writing really didn't give any hints. But I'm not giving that a credit to the writing at all. At all. Right. I think that's a byproduct. Remember how we talk about technical debt in video games? Yeah. This is technical debt in writing. Okay, that's just some positive byproduct of somehow doing bad shitty writing because we didn't see it coming because we didn't know shit about the characters.
Yes,
we're just like, oh wow.
You're probably absolutely right about that, because despite the fact that this movie, it feels like nothing happened, it also feels like a lot of stuff should have happened, but it got cut. Like the way it booms through the story.
Copy, right?
I don't know. I heard rumors.
An hour and a half more film out there.
I heard rumors about that, but that's not available. So I don't know if that's true or not. That could just be a rumor for all I
I
know.
thought that was confirmed, just not released.
Well, the thing that is confirmed is Zach Snyder was in an interview and he said,
Fucking
"Oh, there's a whole nother version of it that they wouldn't let me release. It's a hard R, and it's a totally different movie." That's what he said before the original cut, the one that we watched, even came out. He came out and immediately said, "This movie you're about to watch, there's a director's cut, and it's totally different. Not just a few scenes are different, it's a little longer, blah, blah, blah." He acted like it was literally a different movie, which is one of the craziest things a director could come out and say right before his movie comes out. It's super weird.
Yeah, and I'm not. It's like that's not a defense. It's no way, shape, or form a defense for him. Like you
No.
can't just sit there like right before the series or the show comes out and be like, guys, I pretty much know you guys aren't going to like this because they didn't let me put out the version I wanted to. Look at the version he wants to put out, and it's a 4-hour long quote unquote masterpiece. That's not how the movie industry works. I don't care if you can do a one off to get to like restore or like whatever you need to do to your last movie. That's not a consistent thing you should be doing. It's insane to expect people to sit down for 4 fucking hours to watch one movie. A movie that's not is a part movie, not even a complete story. So after 4 hours of your time, you're still expected to come back for presumably what, another 4-hour session? Like that's
Yeah.
insane.
Honestly, this movie feels like it should have been a limited series chopped up into episodes that are about 50 minutes long. And I feel like maybe the ego of Zack Snyder wouldn't allow him to do that. He makes movies, you know what I mean? Like one of those things, because when you really look at this movie, it feels like a limited series TV show. It doesn't feel like a movie as much. And that's not to say it's not, the effects aren't good and the production's good. The production's all good. It's just that like there's
The
a lot.
pacing. The
Yeah, the
pacing.
bad.
If this is a scale of 0 to 10, it is -5, okay,
Mhm.
for pacing. I I went to bed. I was sleeping watching this movie. I woke up. I actually was progressively getting woken up from watching this movie because of how bad the pacing was. Because I thought I was going crazy. I was like, have I been rolling over and falling asleep or something and missing scenes? I'm like going back. I'm like, no, nothing's happening. These guys are having conversations like weeks have gone by. They're talking to each other like months have gone by. That like there's scenes where like some shit happens and you're expected to even give a single fuck about these characters. Like it's so jarring and weird to me. Like the
Mhm.
way this whole movie was. Like we went back with the Viking dude. You said the reason why his betrayal was such a surprise is because his character had zero fucking development. So when he betrays them all, you're kind of just like,
Mhm.
man, he was so generic, and I thought he was just gonna do his dumbass, stupid role in this movie that you couldn't see his betrayal coming. You know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, there isn't a
remember
lot
that
of
line
plot
at the
development.
very end. At the very end, that white dude that's with her, like the guy that secretly wants to fuck Rebel or whatever her name is. Who's the main chick?
Cora.
Cora. I am woman, hear me roar. Her.
Mm.
Fucking the dude that comes up to her initially and starts putting the team together with her. At the very end, he's like, I told you guys I never trusted that dude.
Mhm.
There's not one fucking scene in the whole movie. At one point, not an iota of
Mhm.
him expressing his opinion about
Nope.
that guy, other
It,
than him just kind of mean mugging the guy sometimes.
clearly that got cut. Yeah, there's. Well, that's the thing. Like when Zack Snyder came out and said, "Hey, there's another cut of this movie that's completely different," that sort of raises a huge red flag for the version we're about to see, which is to say, this is like the version that Netflix thought would do the best with general audiences, and general audiences essentially eat up this kind of nonsensical shit when it in terms of like pacing and in terms of just like set piece, action, explosion, set piece, no plot development. What's going on? Who knows? Here's a new character. Here's a new character. Nothing's happening with these characters. We
I
don't know
think
who
all
they are.
that's trash.
No,
Like I feel like all these shows that do that are like non-memorable and no one watches them.
no. I mean,
All these shows they last one season and they're gone.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, it is Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder has a huge fan base. I love a lot of Zack Snyder movies. 300 is still one of my favorite movies of all time. He's done a lot of good stuff. It's just that, like, I think he got too much in his own head with this movie and is like, people will be patient with me. They'll wait for part 2 before they judge. And I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of people are just judging this movie on its own merits. And on its own merits, if there was no sequel, just imagine if there's no sequel coming for this movie and this was it. You would look at this and be like, this is just a dumb, pointless waste of time. Now,
For sure.
Now, part 2 could come out and blow our fucking socks off. And then at that point, we'll look back at part 1 and be like, oh, well, it was setting the table for this, this, and this. Okay, well, whatever. But at the same time,
Yeah.
they're their own movies, and you can make sequels that are great, but, like, movies should be movies. Like, if you're going to make a series, make a series.
Like, imagine if you went back and looked at New Hope like that.
Yeah.
Be like, well, Empire Strikes Back is the best, and it was still good in Return of the Jedi, but I mean, New Hope was just a stepping stone. It sucked, but I mean, it's we got Empire Strike Back. It's like bullshit. That's just fucking bullshit. New Hope was a great movie.
Yeah, it's funny too because I'll bet there's a whole bunch of fucking Snyder fanboys out there that fucking talk mad shit about Star Wars Episode 1, but they'll probably defend Rebel Moon. And to those people, I say, go fuck yourself.
Insanity.
Episode 1, like it or not, was a complete awesome movie. Maybe it's not your kind of Star Wars. Maybe Darth Jar Jar rubs you the wrong way. Whatever. Either way, that was a complete movie with plot development and character development and a major shit happening all the way through. Nothing in Rebel Moon is even comparative to pod racing, to the final battle with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi with Darth Maul. There's just so much in Episode 1 that just destroys Rebel Moon. So if you're going to come out here and tell me that you think Rebel Moon is great, but you hated the prequels, go fuck yourself.
The only thing Rebel Moon has going for it is aesthetic.
Yes.
Its style is cool. Visually awesome looking.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I thought a lot of the actors and actresses were lackluster. I think a lot of the stuff was phoned in, like the chick with the dual sabers. Not only is that actor, I mean, no disrespect.
Oh, you mean the chick from Lost? Yeah, she sucks.
Yeah.
And she's in all the she's in all the fucking the Matrix guys. I can't even think of their names anymore.
Oh, the Wachowskis.
The Wachowskis. Yeah. Dude, she's in like all the Wachowski brothers new shit. She sucks in that. She sucks in this. Why does she keep getting work? I have no clue. She's horrible.
Diversity. That's why. But
I guess. Get Lucy Liu. She sucks too, but she's better than her.
Lucy Liu's probably fucking too hot and retired to put up with all this shit. Yeah. So,
no doubt.
It's just everything. Like even the canteen scene. Like that's a straight ripped off cantina scene from New Hope. You remember that?
Well, dude, kind of.
It was clearly
there were no tentacle mind control aliens in the cantina in New Hope.
I get it. They had to change it a little bit, but like you clearly saw, like this was them being like, "Hey guys, this was supposed to be a Star Wars film. Here's a little shout out." Everything was just lame. They didn't, and all the best parts of the movie didn't get 1 ounce of explanation. Like the priests with the fucking mass. And like that, we're following the Nazi.
That's my favorite part of the movie, by the way, are those guys. I love those guys. I don't know shit about them, but they're awesome.
Yeah, and then what's his name? Anthony Hopkins playing the king.
Yep, great.
That was probably the only times I was actually super interested in the movie. I was like waiting for his character to be developed. 0. He just runs away at the end. That's what you get. You get a spooked king, and he runs off like a frightened rabbit into the distance.
Yeah.
Cool. And wait a minute, never mind. You get one more scene where he's out there in the cornfield looking away or whatever.
With the antlers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the robot was good. I think the beginning of the movie was all right. The problem I really have with this movie is the middle. The middle is just hot garbage. The end isn't great either, but the beginning has a lot of promise. It starts off slow. it feels like it's building. It feels like it's lingering, right? So like most of this movie doesn't linger. It just goes boo 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 with no fucking development whatsoever. The beginning felt different. Like there's this sort of it breathed a little bit. The beginning, you had this village. You had people talking and discussing life and like the village and everything that's going on, and then of course the Empire shows up, and then it goes into that mode.
You bring up a good point. That was actually a good part. That guy that plays the village elder, he was actually really
he was
good
great.
actor too.
Yeah. He was great. Yeah. But it as soon as the Empire shows up, the mother, would they call them the motherland or the mother world or I don't know, whatever. Those people show up
from Earth, right?
They had like a name for them, like the mother people or something. I don't remember.
Oh.
But as soon as they show up, the pacing just goes to hell for the rest of the movie. But that beginning part I liked. And with the cinematography and the effects, I think that Zack Snyder kind of created a new aesthetic with this movie.
No.
I think so.
Warhammer 40K.
I call it retro surrealism because it's totally retro. It's everything in this movie is based on 70s sci-fi. It's based on late 70s, early 80s sci-fi. It's based on like shit like Blade Runner and shit like Star Wars, just that sort of era of.
Have you ever seen Grimdark Warhammer 40K? Like 80s 40? That's where all this comes from. Yeah, you should. Yeah, well, that's where I think.
What I'm talking about, like, I mean, the whole movie is like this, but a great example is the very beginning when it shows her plowing the field with that super big Saturn planet in the background. It's retro because the color scheming and sort of just like the presentation, but the surrealism comes with how fake it looks, and I think it's on purpose. All the effects in this movie have like an intentional fakeness to them. And they look intentionally retro compared to like what a modern science fiction movie. Just look at Dune, the Dune reboot. So Dune is also 70s, early 80s sci-fi looking stuff. When you look at the Denis Villeneuve Dune reboot, everything looks advanced. It looks way more advanced. It looks modern. Everything in Rebel Moon looks old, but in a surreal way. Like it had extra gloss on it, lens flares everywhere, just sort of like this weird mix of old and new.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two different things going on there, particularly with Zack Snyder. There's the actual aesthetic you're looking at, but then you're looking at the Zack Snyder mystique over that. Look at his other movies like 300. 300, you look at that movie, it's like, sure, it's about Spartans, but look at the scenes. Everything is surreal. The tone, the filters they use.
You know, you might be right.
Zack Snyder, like when they're doing the speeches. Remember, like when they're doing the scene and they're tossing the baby into the pit. Like all of that is just. It's almost like you're watching it on stage happening. Yeah. You know, it's what Zack Snyder does well.
You might be right. He invented retro surrealism a long time ago, and I just sort of put a name on it in my head now. I guess it just took a long time for me to like. I think your
retro surrealism is what I was just talking about with his other movies, but also with what Rebel Moon is bringing in too, and those are colliding with like the sci-fi retro style, almost like, I don't want to say steampunk because it's not really steampunk, but there's like, it's that weird cyberpunk, steampunk, sci-fi amalgamation. That's why I kind of brought up Warhammer, because there's a lot of like 80s grim dark sci-fi elements that you see, especially I don't, because there's so many factions in Warhammer, but there's a human faction in the Imperium that wear like the Nazi-esque like uniforms that these space guys wear. And immediately when I saw that initially, that's where my mind went. I was like, oh, that looks like that faction from Warhammer. And they're in space and they have these giant interplanetary ships that they're using. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty close. This is getting, I mean, other than the connotation that it was supposed to be a Star Wars movie and this is supposed to be the Empire, other than knowing that, it doesn't really save them from looking pretty Warhammery.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not a Warhammer fan, so I'll just defer to you on that if that's true. So
Yeah.
maybe he ripped off a little Warhammery stuff. But once we
He
get
ripped off a lot of shit.
yeah,
Kurosawa, Star Wars, Warhammer, the
what
Wachowskis. I'm just kidding. That was
dude, when I saw her be the lightsaber person, because I saw that person in the trailer, didn't realize it was her, and then I see her in the movie, I'm like, son of a fucking bitch. It ruined like honestly, she half ruined the movie for me. As soon as I saw her, it pulled me out. Bad casting,
she does.
bad
She just
acting.
doesn't. She doesn't seem to actually want to act. Like
No.
every time I see her in a movie, it's like you're being made to fucking
Mm-hmm.
be there or something. I don't know.
Astute observation. I agree with you fully there.
And I kind of resent that they made her the wannabe
Jedi.
Jedi.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agreed too. Yeah. uh,
Anyways.
but one character I did like is the guy who comes right after the Cantina ripoff that you brought up. They immediately go to a desert planet with a slave guy who has a slave making him armor or something in a forge, and he's like, he owes me 2 more years of
This is where
captivity.
this is where pacing in the movie was the worst.
Well, yeah, this is the middle. Exactly. The middle
Yeah.
sucked in this movie. They just show up on this planet. Nothing happens in between. They go straight from the cantina to being at this guy's doorstep, multiple star systems away. So there's like just weeks probably of travel time they just totally skip.
Not even a ship conversation in between.
Nope, nothing. Nothing. They show up and he's like, it makes no sense. The slave guy's like, he owes me 2 more years. You can pay me. And they're like, we don't got no money. He's like, okay, well, if you can ride that there griffin across the sky, you can keep him. Like, what? What the fuck? Who cares? Like, it's the weirdest fucking thing. And of course he does it. He gets on. He's like, he's the animal whisperer. He's like, oh, good boy, good boy. He flies the griffin, and there's like this one part where he whips him off on a cliff, and then he jumps off in slow motion, very 300 style. I don't know if you noticed that,
Yeah.
but when he
Yeah.
jumps off the cliff back onto the griffin, that was 100%
sure.
300.
Also complete bullshit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get slammed into a jagged cliffside going 60, 80. You're dead, bruh. Goodbye. You're meat on the side of the mountain.
It's fantasy sci-fi, so I give it a pass, but you're 100% accurate. That's bullshit. There's no way that would really happen. Anyway, he jumps back on, he finishes his flight of the fucking griffin, lands, and the dude's just like, you sure showed me you're a free man. I'm just like,
well, he also, like, before he even did all that, like, he's talking out in the open. He's like, my ancestors used to tame these animals and ride them. They were the workhorse of their people. Or I'm getting probably that a lot wrong, but he says something along those lines to insinuate like his bloodline can tame these beasts. So it's like, he just told you he's the guy that will be able to do it. He's like, oh, sure, I'll bet. Yeah. Sure, whatever.
Yeah, and then as soon as he gets back and he's like, oh, you're a free man now, blah, blah, blah. He just gets a smirk and decides, oh, that means I can ride it too. It's just the most dumb logical leap I've ever witnessed in a movie in my life. Like, the second he starts approaching that griffin, you know he's going to die. You absolutely know.
And you're meant, like, this is like the litmus test of this movie too, because as a viewer, you're supposed to believe, like, as characters, that guy was keeping that guy down and in prison for years.
Yeah, right.
Not the other way around. Like,
yeah. Well, to Zach Snyder's credit, he does sort of hang a lantern on that little plot point by adding a line. Yeah, I honor my debts. That's the only thing that justifies what you just brought up, because otherwise, it's absurd. It's total absurdity.
I honor my debts to a complete sleaze bag that's enslaving people. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Honorable warrior.
Yeah, so...
But then he also, like, says nice when he gets killed by the bird as they're flying away.
Oh, yeah, that a girl.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
Yeah, so I thought you honored your debts, bro. Like, what the fuck happened?
You should be mourning the death of your debtor, dude.
Yeah. So then we leave, and now we go to the next planet, which is the Jedi chick, which, to be fair, I hate this woman. I hate the actress. I don't like the character much. But I will say this was the coolest action scene in the movie. Do you agree? The spider fight? Ooh, okay.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I'm
Not
trying to think
not a high bar, but yeah, okay.
I'm trying to think if there was even anything else close.
Well, here's the thing.
The bar fight, maybe the cantina fight was maybe the most other action besides the. Oh yeah,
the rape barn is probably the best. Actually, it's either the rape barn or the spider.
That's not really like action, unless you're like,
I don't know.
It was more like the birth of the hero moment, you know. Like she's like, I'm just trying to live. Yeah. It was. It's like I'm just a simple farmer girl trying to live a simple farmer life, but I'm hearing the rape of my sisters. I gotta fucking go in there and This is a 90-pound, literally, and this is the one time when I say a 90-pound soaking wet woman. She looks legitimately 90 pounds. She has anorexia for sure. Like I think she has a health problem. That's debatable, but we're led to believe she can take out a barn of 12 dudes with firearms. She just goes in there like fucking John Wick and just takes them out. That was insulting.
Yeah. You know, I think John Wick, like I love John Wick, but I think it did a disservice to the movie industry because they are now making every single person John Wick in every movie, and it's getting bad. It's getting real bad, especially when you apply it to 90-pound soaking wet females. It's not good.
I think John Wick is not where it's. I think action movies that were awesome in the 80s, in the early 90s.
Everything was awesome in the 80s and early 90s, but go on.
Yeah. But we couldn't mimic that later on in these later years we're in. And now the fresh take idea is to try to channel that energy with women instead. And none of it all sucks. It all just sucks.
Yeah. Well, at least they're doing it in a sci-fi fantasy setting. What really kills me is when they do realistic shows like set in Earth with no sci-fi or fantasy and they make the women do that. That's where I'm just like shut the fuck up. But at least in the fantasy setting, we have plausible deniability. And she's a magical girl. She's Rey, you know. She has metachlorians spinning the right direction. Whatever.
Before I lose there was that other act, the one on the bridge or that like platform they were all fighting on, where that ship came in.
You're talking about the end of the movie.
Was
after the betrayal? End? Yeah, the betrayal happens. The final scene is the betrayal on those floating docks. Where the ship falls in and
yeah.
You think that's the best action scene?
That was pretty cool in comparison, but the spider was pretty sick.
I think the spider's better. Whatever they did with the CG for the spider was spot on. Usually with CG monsters, I'm like, oh, that's stupid. You fucked that up.
Especially with non-CGI backdrops.
Yeah,
that was like that. Yeah,
there's something about this scene with the spider. It just looked real as fuck. It looked amazing. There were no gaffes that I could notice. It just was super smooth. I hate the woman who plays that Jedi character, but it was a great scene in general.
I hate that bitch, but anyway.
Other than the end where she ruined it, where they're all like congratulating her, and she's like, "Don't congratulate me. Don't be happy. This could have been any of you." Just like, shut the fuck up, bitch. Come on.
Honestly, that line didn't make sense.
No.
I was like, what does she mean? Anybody could have been a crazy space spider monster, like in the slums of some planet.
Yeah. is a horrible and that's the thing, like, Zach Snyder, I love you, bro, but what are you doing with some of these lines? Maybe you should get a writer friend and you can just be the overall story czar, but get a different writer maybe, because some of these lines were awful.
Well, he never wrote originally. He was a director. He started writing.
Now he writes.
Cut that shit out.
Yeah.
Cut it out. All right. Go back to directing. And honestly, at this point, I'm not sure you can do that. But give that a shot. Put your whole heart into that and let someone else fucking write a script, okay?
Yeah.
It's insane.
So after the spider planet, we go to the fish people planet. I don't know. This planet was weird. I really love the aesthetic. And again, I'm going to say I love the aesthetic of this entire movie. Every planet they go to looks awesome. And it all follows this retro surrealism I'm talking about, where everything looks super fake, but awesome. In like a sort of weird 80s, 70s vibe. It's really cool.
It's
Everything
like the
is
binder
cool.
art. It's like the binder art from your 90s binders
Fuck
from
yeah.
school.
Exactly.
You're looking at it, you're like, this is sick.
It's a trapper keeper. It's your fucking trapper keeper for sure. But so they get to the next planet, and this is to find the rebel, like the what do they call them? They had some name, but what the rebels that they originally set out to find in the very beginning, when Hux shows up and tells them, "You're giving me all your grain," and he murders the leader. They go on a mission to find this leader of rebels that they sold grain to.
Hux. Is that his name?
Well, no, he's just like Hux from the new trilogy of Disney Wars. He's just like Hux. He's the same character, but rated R. He's got tentacles fucking him in orifices, but it's Hux. All right?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot.
So they get to this planet with like the Fish King. I forget, he has like some name, like Fish King DeSantis or something. I don't fucking know.
Swamp this dude.
and they're talking to him, then all of a sudden this fleet of ships shows up, and in your head you're like, oh shit, the motherland caught him. But it's not the motherland, it's the rebels. And they come down, it's a sister and a brother that are both black with dreadlocks. And I'm like, okay, so it just so happens that the first and only black people we've seen in this movie happen to be the do-gooder rebels that are on the right side of history and blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
what did you expect? Every bad person's a white male in this movie.
It's like come literally. On, man. Really, Zach Snyder, you're going to do that? But whatever. The girl who you only see in this scene, she disappears from the movie after this scene. She's the antagonistic one, like, we're not going to help you. We're too good for that. We're in it for ourselves and blah, blah. And then the boy, I forget, his name's like Warhammer, something like that. So it's probably, makes sense why you think it's a big Warhammer ripoff, because his name was something like Warhammer, right? Like Hammer Heart or War Heart or something like that. And he's like, no, I have honor, so I will go with them, because no planet will fall because of me. And he joins the crew, he joins the team, and I'm just like, listen, you're the leader of this huge rebel army, and you're like, later, guys, I'm gonna go help this backwater planet because I have honor. Yeah, what the fuck? It made no sense. It made no sense at all.
No. Well, it's one of those scenes where it's like they're making you, they're like telling you to care more than you should. It's like we're telling you this is an established story with this character. You should feel more about this character when he just makes this random decision that you really don't give a fuck about. It's like, those are just the scenes I'm really talking about, where it's really just trying to do too much. He's trying to do way too much in that movie. Yeah,
and that's the end of the middle. So the whole middle part of this movie is pretty much what we've talked about for the last 15, 20 minutes. And it is just awful pacing, awful writing, just a lot of sort of like, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this. It doesn't make sense, but we have to do this, which to me, and maybe I'm just being a Zack Snyder defender, you can call me out if you want, but to me, when I look at how bad this middle is, I look at it as like, okay, all of this is going to make sense when part 2 comes out. And then we're going to say, okay, it needed to be like this for part 2.
No way.
No way? All right. I'm a Snyder fanboy. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Fuck, I don't
Clearly know. A simp, dude. We were talking about this earlier. You're going to be one of the many simps in the Garen Logan sphere, dude.
Yeah, okay. All right. You might be right about that. You might be right about that. So now we get to sort of the end of the movie, and this is where we have a little bit of like little talking between the cast members before they get to the final planet, which is where the betrayal happens. We already talked about, with the Viking guy, setting him up in an ambush and then be like, hey, lover boy.
Chairs. Those are pretty good. Go on.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about the murder chairs. The murder chairs.
Not the murder chairs yet, but I love the way that. So they ambush him. they just drop a bunch of boxes on the ground and they just turn into murder chairs and grab them like hydralisks from StarCraft or something. You're just like, what the fuck? And then the Viking and lover boy, as I like to call him, who's the, her main squeeze from the village.
Main simp number one.
They're the only two not captured conveniently so that the betrayer can put a gun to his head and be like, you do what I say, boy. Like, okay, why wasn't there a murder chair for him? Oh, because he wanted to make him kill Cora, the girl, his lover, or, he wants to be his lover, the girl he's simping for. Okay, you planned it ahead of time so that he wouldn't get murder chair just so you could make him kill her, even though she is central to the leader of the motherland wanting to bring her back alive so that he can kill her in front of the council, but you're going to kill her now. Makes zero sense. This part of the movie makes zero sense.
Or writing.
Yeah.
Didn't come across, he didn't think, oh, no one's going to think I just didn't put another murder chair down there for that guy because I want him to be forced to do this. No one's going to think that. Like, it's not a forced plot hole or anything like that so they can escape.
Mm-hmm.
No. It was emotional. It was an emotional decision. Like, he hated the guy. Like, of course he would do that. You would do that. You wouldn't spend all his time and, like, I mean, let's ignore the idea that these Empire folk are, like, desperate. They're starving. Like, at the very beginning of the movie, these guys are, like, hopping from planet to planet, and they're starting to look like they're going to go cannibal on each other, And we're led to believe that these guys are just going to make brash decisions like that. We're going to leave it to a stranger mercenary we hired who's going to make his own decision to leave one chair out so he can force this guy to kill them. When really these Empire could just murder. Like the setup was a setup. He could have just blasted him from the bridge.
Yeah. The good writing version of this scene would have been him immediately being murdered by Hux. Yeah, like that's what you get for thinking I would, partner with you.
That's
or whatever.
What a real Empire officer would do.
Exactly, that's how it would really be. But because this movie has nonsensical writing, he talks down to Hux Jr. Like, I'm in charge. You remember that? There's a part of the scene where like Hux says something. There's a part of this scene with the murder chairs where Hux says something, but then like Viking guy overrides him and like gives orders, and I'm just sort of like sitting there like, what?
Oh, was he like a incognito higher up?
Maybe that's what we're going to see. That's the thing with this movie is like, I wonder if we're going to find out shit in part 2 that makes this shit make sense. Like if we find out he was actually an officer in this fucking Empire ripoff force, whatever you want to call them, the Motherland Crystal, maybe it makes sense. But right now, from the writing, from what we see in episode 1, it makes zero sense, man.
I think he's like Quentin Tarantino with like Crazy 8 or something.
Yeah.
Or whatever. What was that movie called?
Hateful
Crazy 8? Hateful 8. Okay,
yeah. So next problem with this scene, Lover Boy is sitting there with the cow prodder gun at the back of the chair. He zips it in, and he acts like he's gonna kill her. He says, "I'm so sorry, Cora," but then spins it, pulls it out, pulls a 180, and kills him before he can react. Bullshit. There's no way Viking Bro wouldn't have reacted to that faster. There's no way you could do that fast enough for him not to react. That was ridiculous. That was WWF shit. That was when The Undertaker sits there and waits for Mankind to put sake on and put it down his throat. That's what that shit was.
God damn it.
Fucking no, man. So then everyone gets freed. It's because once he frees Cora starts whooping ass like Rey, and then fucking frees the Jedi chick, and then the Jedi chick frees everyone else, and then it becomes, it's a big battle, and blah, blah, blah. All good. The part that killed me at the end here is that when the spaceship falls down, and by the way, the whole absurdity of Turok Griffin Rider killing the guy in the spaceship, riding up to the spaceship, going on the window and all that. That was all fucking absurd as hell. But putting all that aside.
No, that wasn't Turok Griffin Rider. That was the rebel leader who dies, the brother. He goes.
Right. Okay, yeah, not Turok, not Turok.
Yeah.
You're right. Still absurd though. That whole part was super absurd and makes no sense. But whatever, it happened. The ship come down. The floating bridge malfunctions and the blue jets underneath go bing and they start falling. Right. This is the part that kills me. Fucking Hux and Korra fall down and conveniently fall on this like floating beacon thing so that they can have their fucking hero battle for the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was stupid. Are you kidding me?
It's just another ripoff of a Star Wars. They're just trying to channel Star Wars iconograph, like they want to like get those compositions and scenes. Like I totally see what they're trying to do, like a Empire Strike Back, Cloud City type, thing right there.
I guess, dude, but it was absurd as hell. Like the way Hux fell on it and then got right up. Was like, what? You just fell like 50 feet down onto a probe droid, and you're just gonna get right up? No, you have a broken femur, bro. You have a broken fucking femur. Get the fuck out of here.
Like 10 minutes of moaning, just...
Yeah. And I think that like if we were in a podcast right now with a third person who was a Snyder bro, what they would tell us right now is that, oh no, he's part machine. They established that with the tentacle monsters that had hentai sex with him earlier in the movie. Okay, maybe, but we see later on, right after this scene, when they, by the way, this is what ruins the movie for me. The only weight we had in this movie was Hux dying at the end. Like, okay, something happened. But then, of course, they find him on the beach and they resuscitate. Even though he fell like 1,000 feet down onto that beach and he survived. But they found him, they resuscitate him, and then they send him to go into the metaverse to meet Korra's dad, who's the leader of the Empire.
Yeah.
You can see clearly in that scene that he's not a machine. The whole way that their little organic transporter device works to send him in the metaverse, there are no machine parts in his body. They show you his body. It's not a machine. He's not a robot. So what the fuck?
Well, that was like a simulate. I don't even know what that was. Cool though. That was like the only cool part of the movie.
It was cool.
When I saw that, I was pretty high. I was like, whoa.
It was cool as shit. I don't disagree with that, but it makes no fucking sense. It's incongruent to what happened before. That's the problem with this movie, is that each scene doesn't respect the scene that comes before or the scene that comes after. It's like every scene is a reset button for continuity, and that is horrible. That is not good.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie, it's dog shit.
I will say, I love Korra's dad, the actor that they got to play Korra's dad, who's like a Napoleon type, and he's like the great conqueror, and he like raped and pillaged her entire planet and then left her as the only one alive and said, now you're my daughter, now that I've raped your entire planet. I like the guy that they got to play him. I don't know if I like the character per se, but the guy who plays him is good. That actor is good.
Yeah, I guess I just can't get behind any of it because it just irks me. I can't take any movie seriously where they clearly are going out of their way to like make white males the only...
Oh, you mean every movie that's come out since 2016? Yeah, I know.
Well, I will say, like, you are right, but at least they try to, like, at least shake it up slightly to make it so they can at least argue the fact, This movie doesn't even fucking try. Like, literally every single villain is a white middle-aged male.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it has an agenda. Like, he was looking for some fucking equity points or something.
Yeah, I know. I know. I get so excited, like... This is going to sound bad, but I get so excited now when I watch a movie or a TV show and the villain's a black guy. Not because, like, I think all black guys are evil or something like that. It's just because I'm so fucking used to the middle-aged white dude being the villain. When I see a black villain, I'm like, oh,
or a boss
I'm in.
babe.
Like
It's a
this
boss
is
babe, or yeah.
it's like this is different. Like this is not atypical. Like I don't know, man. We live in a strange time, and Zack Snyder isn't helping things. That's for sure.
Fuck no.
And
literally every scene into it was such a childlike perspective on how he built all of his characters. He's like, all right, the semi-attractive middle-aged women are all the powerful characters. We'll give them give her double swords. She's gonna have a sweet backdrop with a scythe in her arms. It's gonna make her look brooding and powerful, even though she's 85 pounds, but it doesn't matter. Like,
yeah.
Yep.
And then pretty much after like the organic transportation system with Hux going to talk to Korra's dad, for my money, that was the coolest scene in the entire movie. I think you agree with me. I think you actually said that. So we're agreement there. That's like the apex of the movie. And you do want the apex of the movie to be at the end, but you don't want it to be like the epilogue. Like that was the epilogue. That wasn't like the movie was over at that point. That's what that really was a trailer for part 2 is what that scene really was.
Yeah. Well, I think the main reason it was good is because it was the antithesis to the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually good. You know, you like all of a sudden you flip got switch. You're like, oh, I'm interested now. What's going on? Hold on a second. And you start paying attention. You're like, I wanted more of this. What happened to this guy?
Yep.
And then, at the end of the day, the movie's problem is pacing. Like, it truly has a pacing problem that I think will bury this movie in the end. I don't think it will recover from part 1. It might. Part 2 is going to come out, obviously, and they might get that 4-hour version. But I think the damage not only was done with the Snyder cut of Justice League and that whole drama, but then now this being his other chance.
I think the Snyder cut was good, by the way. I don't.
The Snyder cut was good, but not for movie. Not for 4 hours.
Yeah,
like I'll argue this to death. Like you can't get normal people, even if it's a masterpiece. Like think of The Godfather. Like you can't go up to people nowadays and be like, The Godfather's a masterpiece. Please go watch 1 through 3. Like it's just a hard ask for a lot of people, and especially in one fucking movie. 4 hours.
I think, like, honestly, if part 2 rectifies and makes part 1 better, and when you add part 2, it's complete and everything's okay. If that is the case, which I think is sort of a long shot, but if that is the case, you should have released them at the same time then. You should have released them at the same time. Because when you release a part 1 like this that has really no beginning, middle, and end, like when we really talk about this as a movie, as a beginning, middle, and end, that's why we hate it so much, is because there is no middle, the end sucks, the beginning is the only decent part, but the best scenes are in the end, which doesn't make sense. Like the whole thing is just sort of like a contrivance of a contrivance. Yeah. If you have the second part right off the get-go, then that doesn't matter. But right now we have one movie, and the movie just doesn't add up.
Yeah, I can't get behind the idea that if part 2's better, it makes up for part 1 somehow. Yeah.
It's a long shot, but it could happen.
I think he should have just fucking stopped writing after the Snyder cut. The Snyder cut should have told him that he couldn't do these
He should have just stopped writing.
He's a great director. That's where he's made all of his money.
I know. He's an amazing director. I know. It's stupid.
He still look good. That's the thing. Like every scene he puts together looks beautiful. Mm-hmm. But it all just fell flat in this movie because he was juggling writing and directing for the second fucking time. He needs to stop. He needs to get like a right hand or something he trusts to help him with his movie process, because clearly that's where it's coming from. He clearly has some thing going on in his head, like you kind of alluded to earlier in this podcast, where it was just like he has to do it, like everything has to kind of be handled by him or it's not right anymore. It's almost like he's developed a mania or something. I don't know. his daughter did die. I mean, he could be just shook from that. A lot of his fans like to use that as a cop out for his failures, but it's like, I don't know if his daughter dying takes away from him being a great director that much. Like, I think it's
that's a fucking ice cold take. I love that.
I think
I don't think his daughter dying is a good excuse for being a shitty writer.
No, that's not what I said. I said I don't think his daughter dying takes away from him being a great director. I said it's the opposite. I think his daughter died.
How dare you? You wasted your daughter's death and didn't become better on it.
His daughter dying has turned him into an emo that wants to write about things. Now he's a writer all of a sudden.
Oh, okay.
You know?
So now, I get it now. You're saying like
his thoughts. He's like, oh, I can be a brooding author now, writer. Mm-hmm. Like I can write this shit. When maybe he could if he didn't direct, but he's not going to give the director's seat up. Yeah. So it's like I can do a 4-hour long big budget fucking Kurosawa whip off Star Wars movie with perfect everything. And that's kind of where this movie came off as, but it failed.
Yeah. All right. Sure. Yeah. His daughter died and he said, I can become Edgar Allan Poe. Why not?
Well, it's natural, right? I mean, like, obviously at that age in your life, your fucking daughter committing suicide, you're gonna become a dark individual. You're going to be an emo, but it just sucks that he channeled that into thinking he could write in his movies with that energy. And that's what I'm projecting. Okay. That's why I feel like he's getting his writing nature from.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of slow motion in this movie. There's a lot of lens flares and not a lot of good writing, unfortunately. And, there ain't much else to say about it. Like, honestly, the highlights of this movie were Anthony Hopkins playing the robot and woof. Not much else. Like, there really isn't a lot there. But I don't know.
Blonde chick was pretty hot.
The blonde chick. You talking about the rape barn?
Yeah, the one that's supposed to be like the princess incarnate or something like that. She's pretty hot.
Yeah. They spent a little bit too much time talking about like lore when they weren't establishing current characters. So like if you're going to establish lore for dead characters that aren't even a part of the movie, at least put some time into the characters that are in the movie. They spent more time on Princess Issa than they did on any of the Samurai 6 that we have in this movie.
On any of the Samurai 6.
I don't know. All right, Broadcaster.
Like an Aqua Teen Hunger Force skit.
As you know, here in the Crack Cellar, we have an official patented 80s slasher rating system in which we rate all of our reviews. And within this system, Broadcaster, I need to know what you rate Rebel Moon, Part 1, Child of Fire.
I'm going to give it a fat D. I want to give it an F because it's a failure. I don't think Michael Myers even deserves it.
Michael Myers is like, come on, bro.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I feel like I just dogged on this movie the whole time. I don't really need to say much. I knew what I was gonna say. The movie just sucks, dude. It's just a bummer.
It's just a bummer.
I really wanted to like this movie.
Yeah.
Zach Snyder's made some great movies. I just think he's lost his touch. And it's sad to say, but we all lose our touch at some point at different ages. And sometimes maybe you got to move on, you got to find something else, or maybe stop writing. I'm not sure, but he needs to pick something. He needs to pick something before he ruins his legacy.
And that thing is director.
Dude, 300 and Sin City were so fucking good. It's crazy to think we're talking about the same guy. Watchmen too.
Like his early catalog is fucking fire.
He was like the first Christopher Nolan.
He was.
He was like the guy that couldn't fuck up. He came out with a banger like every time, you know?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It really is. I am going to give it a Chucky, though. I understand why you gave it a Michael Myers, but I'm going to go Chucky just because there are a few things about this movie that I really loved. And first and foremost is the quote-unquote retro surrealism. There were scenes in this movie that just took my breath away. Like all the planets, all of the CG, and usually with planet CG, I will get really precious about it. I'll look at it and be like, that looks stupid, that looks fake. What the fuck were you doing? Every time they went to a new planet, I looked at it, I'm like, that's fucking beautiful. That looks like straight out of a fever dream if I were like dreaming of Blade Runner on cocaine or something, you know? It's just like, it was great. I loved all the cinematography. I loved the special effects. I loved most of the action scenes. The real big thud, the big zero here is the fucking writing. The writing was uneven. The pacing was uneven. And it's not a complete movie. It just isn't. There is no complete movie here. A New Hope, as you said earlier in the review, is a complete movie. This is not a fucking complete movie. And you know what? Maybe part 2... if you combine part 1 and part 2, our powers combined were a full movie. But right now, all we have is part 1, and it's not a fucking full movie. So I'm going to have to give it a Bride of Chucky.
The only way to save this is if part 2 is good, then they merge them and then delete the first part like it never existed and don't allow people to even talk about it. Like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is the version. All right?
Yeah. And with that, we'll close out. But as we close out, Broadcaster, I want to ask you one final question. If and when the quote-unquote Snyder cut of part 1 is released, will you watch it?
Probably.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say
it. Just so I could say I told you so to myself. Like, I fucking knew it. I told you it's going to be fucking garbage. Just wasted another fucking 4 hours of your life. Congratulations. It's like you want to give the guy a chance. But at this point, it's starting to feel like he doesn't fucking deserve it.
Yep.
But how many big fucking Hollywood movies have I made? So who fucking cares? All right.
Yeah. Well, by that logic, reviews shouldn't exist, and no reviewer is legitimate unless, Quentin Tarantino goes out and reviews Zach Snyder, which would be awesome. Could you imagine Quentin Tarantino doing a review podcast where he reviews other people's shit?
Well, didn't Quentin Tarantino famously say movie critics are like the scum of the earth or something like that?
No, dude, more than that, he said his final movie is going to be about movie critics. He said that in an interview a long time ago. He said, I'm gonna have a set amount of movies, and when I do my very final movie, it's gonna be about movie critics. And when you extrapolate based on his previous movies, oh, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be
fucking amazing. I can see him already. He's probably been writing this for like a millennia in his head. He's contemplating the different ways he can murder all of the movie critics in his head.